The content shared in this video is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I acknowledge that food insecurity is a complex and sensitive issue that affects individuals and communities in different ways. While I aim to provide accurate information and raise awareness, this video is not a substitute for professional advice or support services. If you or anybody you know is struggling with food insecurity, you are not alone. Did you know that cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death worldwide, yet it's largely preventable? Today, we are going to dive into why your heart health is at a higher risk than you may think. The human heart is only the size of a fist, but it is the hardest working muscle in the body. With every heartbeat, the heart pumps blood, carrying oxygen and nutrients. It is considered the most important organ in the human body, but it often falls victim to our habits. Cardiovascular disease is an umbrella term that defines a range of diseases that affect the heart, brain, and blood vessels. There are different types of cardiovascular disease. The following are more prevalent throughout the world. Coronary heart disease is when narrow arteries restrict blood flow to the heart. Heart attacks occur when the blood flow of the heart is completely blocked, depriving it of essential oxygen and nutrients. And stroke, which happens when the blood supply to the brain is interrupted, leading to oxygen deprivation and brain issues. There are a multitude of other conditions that fall under cardiovascular disease. You might think cardiovascular disease is something that only affects older adults, something far from the future. But the truth is, it's a lot closer to home than most people realize. It is not just a future concern, it's something that is already silently impacting millions of lives today, and at younger ages than ever before. 1 out of every 5 cardiovascular deaths in the United States happens to somebody younger than 60. Several studies have found that around 1/3 of college students are overweight. Nearly half have high blood pressure. More than half have elevated bad cholesterol, and about 1 in 4 have at least one component of metabolic syndrome. It is not just about risk factors, it's about real outcomes. According to the CDC, 1 of every 5 deaths in the United States is due to cardiovascular disease. On average, one person dies from this disease every 33 seconds. Just since the start of this video, 4 lives have already been lost to this silent killer. The average class of UMass Amherst is 40 students. This means that at least 2 people sitting next to you in every class are headed towards premature death. The statistics don't lie, and honestly, hearing them might leave you feeling scared. But that fear also brings up an important question. What's actually causing all of this? After all, the very first thing I said in this video was that cardiovascular disease is largely preventable. So let's break it down. What is really behind these numbers? And more importantly, what can we do about it? When we talk about the major behavioral risk factors for heart disease, things such as lack of physical activity, smoking, chronic stress, and poor sleep habits often come to mind. But one of the most important and often overlooked factors is diet. A healthy diet isn't just about eating less junk food. It's about fueling your body with a variety of nutrient-rich foods. The dietary guidelines for Americans lay out a clear roadmap for healthy eating, aiming not just to meet our nutritional needs, but also to protect us from disease. But here's the reality. The average American diet is far from ideal. A 2010 report from the National Cancer Institute found that 3 out of 4 Americans don't eat a single piece of fruit in a day. And almost 9 of 10 don't get the minimum recommended amount of vegetables. On top of that, the typical American diet is loaded with sodium, saturated fats, and added sugars and alcohol, a combination that puts a serious strain on heart health. Most dietary sodium comes from added salt. While the body requires a small amount of sodium to function properly, excessive intake possesses serious health risks. On average, we consume more than 3,300 milligrams of sodium per day, far exceeding the federal recommendation of less than 2,300 milligrams. Excess sodium raises blood pressure by disrupting the kidney's ability to regulate fluid balance. Normally, the kidneys remove waste from the bloodstream. However, when sodium levels are too high, water is drawn back into the bloodstream, increasing blood volume. Over time, this forces blood vessels to work harder, thickening the walls and contributing to high blood pressure, a condition that plays a role in nearly half of all heart attacks and strokes. Fat is essential for health, providing critical fatty acids and fat-soluble vitamins. However, it is also calorie-dense, and overconsumption can be harmful. Saturated fats, commonly found in animal products and processed foods, can raise bad cholesterol levels, promoting plaque buildup in the arteries and increasing the risk of heart attack and strokes. Trans fats, the most harmful type, not only raise blood cholesterol levels, but also lower good cholesterol levels. They trigger inflammation, impair insulin sensitivity, and are strongly linked to heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. As of 2020, the FDA has limited trans fats in foods, but it is important to note that trace amounts of trans fats may still be present in certain foods. To truly grasp how a high fat diet impacts the body over time, researchers turn to controlled studies. One example comes from animal research, where scientists can observe the long term effects of dietary patterns on the cardiovascular system on a living body without crossing ethical concerns that come from experimenting on humans. Let's take a closer look at a mouse study that sheds light on the real world consequences of consuming a high fat diet. 6 male mice were housed under controlled temperature and humidity condition with a 12 to 12-hour light-dark cycle and unrestricted access to food and water. All mice were fed a standard diet until 5 weeks of age, after which they were divided into two groups. One cohort continued on a regular diet, while the other was switched to a high-fat diet. Over the course of 8, 12, and 16 months, researchers assessed the metabolic, vascular, and cardiac features on both groups. Mice on the high-fat diet developed a range of health complications. Another contributing to the growing burden of cardiovascular disease is sugar. It's important to understand that sugar itself isn't inherently bad. There is sugar in everything, including foods considered to be healthy. The real concern comes from added sugars, redefined sugars that are mixed into processed foods, soft drinks, food-flavored beverages, and desserts. These sugars often provide empty calories, which have low nutritional value and often do not promote satiety. In fact, they trigger a dopamine response in the brain, making consumers wanting more and leading to addiction. Over time, regularly consuming high amounts of added sugar can lead to elevated blood pressure, insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, diabetes, and obesity. When we consume more sugar than our body can use for energy, blood sugar levels spike quickly, and the excess is converted and stored as fat, fueling the cycle of weight gain and metabolic dysfunction. But this raises an important question. Is this just an American problem, or is it something bigger? Is there a correlation between region, lifestyle, and diet? The 7 countries study, performed in the mid-20th century by Ansel Keys and a variety of researchers all over the world, was a collective investigation on how disease rates, particularly heart disease, were related to diet across different populations. The study took place in 2 phases. In phase 1, researchers surveyed 16 cohorts of middle-aged men from different countries, following them over a period of 5 to 10 years. Phase 2 expanded to include cardiovascular health surveys of elderly individuals from 9 European cohorts. The results were groundbreaking. Populations in the Mediterranean countries had exponentially lower rates of heart disease and mortality compared to other parts of the world. Scientists believe that this is credited to the Mediterranean diet, which is not a rigid set of rules but a general pattern of eating based on the traditional cuisines of countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea. It focuses on daily consumption of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, and healthy fats like olive oil. Fish, poultry, legumes, and eggs are eaten weekly, while red meat and foods with added sugars are limited. Rich in unsaturated fats, particularly from olive oil and nuts, the diet helps lower bad cholesterol. It also includes omega-3 fatty acids from the fish, which reduce inflammation, lower triglycerides, and decrease the risk of stroke and heart failure. Importantly, adopting a Mediterranean-style diet is beneficial even after signs of cardiovascular disease have already occurred. The Lionheart study tested this through a randomized controlled trial in patients who had recently experienced a heart attack. Participants were assigned either to a group that followed a Mediterranean-style diet or to a control group that received no specific dietary advice. Those who followed the Mediterranean diet experienced significantly lower recurrent events than compared to the control group. When considering whether this diet is achievable in the United States, it's common and important to go beyond stereotypes of the so-called fat American. The reality is far more complex. Politics, economics, and social structures deeply influence what people can access, afford, and ultimately consume. Following a Mediterranean-style diet often requires access to fresh, high quality ingredients on a regular basis. However, having access to nutritious meals has always been a privilege, not a given right. As of June 2024, 21% of Americans reported that they or someone close to them had experienced persistent hunger within the past year. Even more concerning, nearly half of Americans said that it was difficult for them to regularly obtain and eat nutritious foods. As a result of this, Americans are turning to cheaper, calorie dense, ultra processed foods that are high in added sugars, saturated fats, and preservatives. These foods are not only more affordable, but they also have a longer shelf life and require less preparation, making them a practical choice for families facing time, transportation, or economic hardships. Although government funded programs aim to provide support for their citizens, these efforts are often not enough to offset the broader structural issues at play. Thankfully, there's a way to make daily adjustments in order to eat better on a budget. Prioritize beans and lentils. They're affordable, packed with protein, and form the base of countless Mediterranean dishes. Choose canned and frozen produce. They have similar nutritional content, just check for low sodium and no sugar added options. Cut back on empty calories. Skip sugary drinks and limit processed foods that offer little nutritional value. Incorporate canned and frozen low mercury seafood. Options like canned salmon, sardines, and frozen fish give you heart healthy fats without the high price tag. Learn how to properly cook and store your food. Smart preparation techniques help you preserve nutrients and stretch your food budget. Reach out for support when you need it. And remember, you're not alone. Your health is the most valuable thing you have, and you have more power over it than you may think. No matter where you're starting from, small steps today can lead to a stronger, healthier future. Take your heart into your own hands, fuel your body with care, and remember, you are worth the effort.